All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Matthew Smith, and we're beginning a new series for our How to Build a Better Community. And I can't think of a better man to open this conversation with than a fellow who's done his own building. He's literally an architect. He's made several communities and homes. You're looking at one right behind his head right now. And we're going to discuss in this particular conversation his opinions on how we can build a better community. Matthew, hello.
Hello, Lorenzo.
So let's start with saying, well, how would you define community? Let's start with that.
Oh boy, that's good. I think a community is perhaps a group of people with uh, shared values, shared economy, shared space, shared resources. I would say that at the heart of community is family, and yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest to answer.
Yeah,
So maybe we can, dig into that as we
it's
explore
interesting, isn't
here.
it? I thought of the same thing. Like, what do you think? Is a community someone like, Matt is in, Northwestern United States. I'm in Japan right now. I talk with people yesterday, someone in Detroit, a fellow in Australia. My parents are in, Toronto and Canada. But it seems to me, even though everyone has been separated over the last few years through the craziness, my community seems to be getting tighter knit and more loving and more connected. And it's
Hmm.
very interesting and strange that way, in that I used to think, community is maybe someone next door, someone, across the road. And that's true, of course. You have to, look at your neighbor every day. On the other hand, I'm feeling much closer with people I'm connecting with through the shared intent and work and
Hmm.
creative ideals we're doing right now. And so for me, I think community is just, what we've said with our hub is good people doing good things for good reasons. And that is enough of a definition as far as I'm concerned, as long as everyone puts their best foot forward.
Right. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, you have, you do have the shared values, and on the other hand, you, I think in a community, members support one another and can depend upon one another.
And so for that, I find you need honesty. You need strong, like I find in a real community, right? It's not so much as that you impose rules on people. This is what I'm looking at in these days. It's like, a lot of the old style way of looking at the world. If you talk to people that have their fears, let's say, it seems to me they always, even in talking to my parents, they want rules because they figure you need outside rules to make sure everyone's behaving themselves.
Hmm.
You hear that over and over. We need taxes for this reason. We need laws for this reason. We need, police for this reason. We need so-called government and politicians for this reason. And, I call BS on the lot of that personally. I find instead you choose people to join your community that already have their hearts in the right place, and the rest of that kind of goes out the window. Like, somebody who's moral is not going to cheat you, is not going to, do bad things to your land, your children. It's a simple way of looking at the fact that once you're a whole human being, you're going to act in a way that will make you part of a good community.
Yeah, I think that aspect right there of being a whole human being is extremely important and perhaps really undervalued. For myself, just speaking of these last 2, 3 years, we moved to this town. I live in Shoreline, which is just north of Seattle, and we moved here with big expectations, and it seemed like a wonderful community. There's schools that our kids can walk to. There's parks that they play soccer in, and but then the experience of the whole, the lockdown and everything that came with it, our community members began to, turn on us and be very, confrontational and imposing, rules and restrictions on us, and in ways that were just totally inappropriate. And so my perception of my immediate my townsfolk have changed, and so with that is my my sense of community. So yeah, I find myself reaching out to people with shared values, that are working on themselves, doing the hard work of improving themselves as individuals, spiritually, physically, career wise, what have you, not giving in to doom and gloom, and just growing themselves as an individual. So I think too, like sense of the idea of community can be lost in the group, in like the hive mind. That's not a community to me. When you just kind of succumb to the pressure of groupthink. I want to connect with people and form community bonds with people who have actually explored, themselves individually and grown, and are willing to stand up for what they believe to be true.
I mean, I fully agree. I mean, if anyone who's come to the newagora.ca, our page, and you haven't been there over the last few days, we've reimagined the entire plate, the Fire homepage. We have a new slider on the top, and this is where I'm talking with Matt, where one side is how to build a better consciousness, the other side is how to build a better community, or how to build a better person and how to build a better community. But I think Matt just kind of hit the nail on the head, so to speak, if you'll pardon, my way of talking to an architect, in that they're actually kind of one and the same. If you're building a better community, you can't do it without building a better person. I found the same challenges Matt found in my life, in that when I used to go to so-called religion groups or so-called community groups, and people were professing love and happiness and help your neighbor and all of these other, great sounding ideals, but, then they would leave the room and go back to being not so nice in one way or several ways. And something that's been lost, especially over the last few years, as you say, and I think since even I was a little boy in these communities, is people have been taught or shown that you can be tricky to make a living, or you don't have to be loving to your neighbor. You can just pretend, or you say, with a smiling face and you have a mask on, but behind you're not being genuinely cooperative and helpful and that sort of thing. And from the inside out, I found you really do have to become a better person to be of this part of a community. You can't fake it, right? It's and so only good people are really allowed. And I'm not saying there's a rule or offense or anything like that, but I'm thinking if you're in a real community where everything is out in the open, let's say bad will get exposed, and that is how a community will, let's say, self-govern itself, or elect to govern yourself.
Yeah, I think, steel on steel, we become stronger and sharper. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I used to tell people that I grew up with the Sopranos kids. People, when I meet people out here in the Northwest, just to orient them to kind of, parts of my personality and where I come from. And, there's a time where, steel on steel really serves us, but then there's a time where it becomes too individualistic, where you're pushing other people down to lift yourself up. And I mentioned New Jersey because that's kind of part of the MO out there. Like, I grew up in a family of contractors, and my mother's and my father's uncles, brothers, my uncles on both sides of the family were contractors, and there's just a lot of like hyper competition, where it was I do better if someone else does worse, or that sort of a thing. And boy, I got out of that in a hurry, because I don't think that type of individualism is the answer, but a type of individualism that uplifts yourself, your family, the people around you. I think that's what we're talking about here in terms of developing as an individual and connecting with other folks that are doing the same.
Yeah, we want to look at it as, your success is shared, grow exponentially. That's one of the tenets we have with our community. So if Matt's doing well, I do well, right? So if I help him, or I help his family in the ways that he asks for help, that's the other good thing about community, is you don't impose, which is something we can talk about over the last few years, where, you have a way of thinking, health wise, masking wise, whatever, and you feel you have to impose your beliefs or your ideals on your neighbor because for some reason that will make you feel better, and you don't care about them. That's ridiculous, really. And that, in a community, is as long as you don't do any harm to the next person, they should be allowed, and they will be allowed in our community, to do what they feel is right for them and their family. And naturally, like I've never met Matt face to face, and yet I'm delighted to help him and share with him. And I'll go on a limb here and say we feel a connection towards each other as men trying to grow and do good things in the world. And we're grateful for the opportunity to meet and share, even though he's, Northwest US, I'm in Japan right now, I'm from Canada, in ways that we might not have been able to do if we hadn't had these shared challenges, let's say, of the viral shenanigans over the last few years, which kind of forced us to meet in this way, virtually. And so what I'm saying is in the bottom line with that is, through challenge born, right? If you're an intelligent being and you're a strong man or a strong woman, whatever challenges hit you, you can come out with loving options on the other side instead of the fearful ones.
Yeah, I like the term viral challenges. And you mentioned being a man, and it just seems, well, these days it's one of the hardest and most important jobs, I think, is to be a strong man. And I don't shy away from saying that at all. It just seems like everything is directed away from that. And I have 3 sons, 3 teenage boys, and it's a day-to-day challenge to give them what they need to keep going, to help them orient in this world. And from the the nonsense content they get on the cell phones, to the way the school is structured, to just about everything is just pulling them in directions that I feel is wholly unhealthy. So for me, holding space with strength and integrity has, it's difficult sometimes. It's often difficult, but it's so important, and I see the results of it. I absolutely. And so for instance, and I don't mind getting a little bit personal with my family. My oldest son, who's just turned 18, 3-4 years ago, he was really overweight. He and his mom. I am divorced from his mother, and so he grew up with a lot of additional challenges that I didn't have growing up. A lot of emotional challenges. So it took me a long time to figure out that he was eating his emotions, basically, right? And it took a dear friend to help me sort that out. At that time, there was this big push towards body positivity,
So-called body positivity.
So-called body positivity. And it took a lot of soul searching to figure out how to approach that in a way that, one, uplifted him and didn't make him feel bad about himself, but 2, gave him a direction, gave him a way to move forward, to appreciate the health, wellness, and personal development. And I'm so happy now and just gratified, because I see him now, and he's an incredibly strong kid. He got into football, he started lifting weights, and he took control of his nutrition and his health. And now he is an example to his community. He's got a group of friends that he gets into weightlifting and nutrition and strength building, and so that ripple effect, it's really profound. And it's just so humbling. It's just humbling to see the continued ripple outwards of good intention mixed with strength and integrity.
Well, it's funny that it hits a bell with me, because until I was 18, I was overweight as well, right? My parents weren't divorced, but I was eating my emotions, patting myself from the world, hiding from my feelings. And I didn't have a father at the time that helped me in that way. I had to, look at myself when I, basically I wanted to have girlfriends. So I said, I better lose weight. That was my modus operandi at the time. I said,
it's a good motivation.
Yeah, I said, if I don't lose weight, it's never going to happen. So here I go. And, I had to self-motivate, we'll say, because even though I don't like the word, I had to motivate myself. And what I see here, which is really interesting, is, I met Matt indirectly through the work I've done. I followed my heart to set up our hub and set up our website and set up some of the other services I wanted to offer. And Matt has his services and what he does and the family that he's built, or the families, because I guess you've remarried since then. So in some ways you've built a couple of families in your real way, besides homes and things like that. And what I'm really getting at is, if you follow your heart and you do what you feel like doing, and I don't mean emotionally doing, I mean what your guts are telling you to do, and you're willing to put the hard work in, because Matt will be maybe the second person in this conversation to tell you there's definitely hard work involved in building a good life. It's possible, as long as you don't look outside for anyone to do it for you. I guess that's another thing a man would say, is that, you stand up, you stake your claim, and you build this community in the best way you can, and you will naturally attract others that want to come and do it with you.
Yes, indeed. And it's possible to overdo it too. So for instance, yeah, you see behind me this roundhouse that I built for my family. We don't live there currently. We live in the third house that I built as a father. And so I had to learn that I was sort of recreating the trauma of my youth by continuing to get into construction projects over and over and over again, sort of recreating the chaos of my youth. And I grew up in an old house with a big family, and it was falling down around us. And my father is blind, so he wasn't able to do the work. So as a young kid, my mother depended upon me to do this work. So I was used to that sort of like chaos of a home remodel on a construction site, and so I kept recreating that as an adult, as a father. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm building the house for my family, and I'm doing it again, and now I'm doing it again. And I had to learn, like, hey, wait a minute, what I'm doing is I'm recreating trauma, and now I'm starting to pass this down to my kids. So I needed to learn to check that tendency that I have. I was replicating sort of this emotional, trauma pattern, and yeah, I realized, like, I'm doing this to an unhealthy extent, and so I had to actually learn, and I'm still learning, to be at peace in, to be at peace in the spaces that I create.
Okay, one quick question before I get into what I want to comment on that. Who's living in that house behind you at the
We
moment?
sold it.
You sold it.
Yeah, another
Too bad. I
half.
love it. It's a great house. I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
If I ever see, this is what I'm saying. So I'm talking to Matt. I'm getting inspired. If I ever build my own house or have a house built, I would like it to look just like the one behind him, because I know round and energetic and no square is the way that, your energy can flow and things like that. And also, Matt is a reflection, quite literally, which is really interesting, because as an artist, I'm an artist and a poet. I'd like to see the reflection in the world of someone's energies. And I'm talking with Matt, and he's talking about healing himself, and getting over his trauma, while you see one of the creations behind him, quite literally, of a home that seems to me it's built to flow. It's got water beside it, and and it's round with lots of windows. Obviously, I love windows. So he's become the living embodiment, in my opinion, of what he's sharing and how he's sharing it. And so he's showing, more than we're talking about in this particular conversation, how to be that kind of man, to be in this kind of community. And what I want to say before I bring this back to Matt is, we've opened this conversation to people to tell us how to be in community. And we're not really interested in just, become a good person and go to the light, and then everything's fantastic, or airy fairy suggestions for a community. When we say how to build a better community, we want solid, real, active answers that can come to the forefront to help everyone. And that means, as Matt brought up at the beginning of this conversation, doing the inside work and the outside work at the same time, because without having strong people in the community, you allow those fears in, and then it gets eaten and rotten from the inside out. And I've traveled the world before I started even doing this new Agora work and the new Now work. And I saw a lot of so-called intentional communities that fell apart because the members were not, I don't want to say moral, but we'll just say they didn't have integrity. That's how I'll put it.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar too. This house here was intentional community adjacent. So we got to witness a lot of that. And yeah, like you said, there's no one answer to what it is that makes a community. It's a symbiotic process where you need strong individuals that are doing the hard work on themselves, and you need you. It certainly helps to have structures that are uplifting and increase energy and so forth. And I love, absolutely love designing these types of houses. I've designed over 100 of them all over the United States. And oftentimes I'll hear from clients and I'll get pictures of their home after it's done built and they've moved in, and it just is, it's the most satisfying thing that I can think to do for a living, because every house that I design that gets built is going to be at the center of a family. And I take that as a real sacred obligation. And so that, yeah, the round structures really do flow in that kind of resonance that these houses have, I think contributes to the growth of individuals. Now, on the other hand, as an architect, I've also seen this sort of overemphasis on design as the solution. And for instance, back in 2005, I got really involved in Hurricane Katrina recovery efforts, and I was at the heart of a group, I would say, of architects, a national group of architects that wanted to lend their services to the recovery efforts that were going on in New Orleans after Katrina. But it was just like, let's propose design solutions. And they really missed the mark, because what wasn't part of that conversation was, well, what does the community want and need, and what are people asking for?
I think what we're seeing here is a holistic approach to everything you're doing is
Right.
the best for building this community. And the beautiful thing about a real community, I would say, is to look at it as a family, and that Matt has certain skills that I don't have. Perhaps I have certain skills that he doesn't have. Perhaps you've spent your life building a fortune in gold doubloons, but your heart is lacking. Perhaps you have skills in baking, right? But your building skills are lacking. Perhaps you have skills in one sort of resource, but another resource is lacking. And a real community will get together, and then you'll be able to share what you have excess of, what they have a lack in, and the other way around for you, the way you would be in an ideal family, without having to worry. It's like there's a fair exchange because everyone likes each other, because everyone genuinely wants to help each other. And whether you're connected face to face or virtually right now, I find using, I've heard all kinds of things that people are going, oh my goodness, we're separated because of the internet, or, because of the lack of face to face, the world is a horrible place, and nobody's, doing things in the physical anymore. But, as an intelligent being, you can use the negative to your positive, and, get to interact with people everywhere, which I wouldn't have if I hadn't been forced, let's say, out of the face-to-face when I was, when we were doing print in Vancouver and BC, the West Coast, even up to California, and online. And what I'm really getting at is, whatever your challenges, if you genuinely want to fix them, you can. There's nothing but help out there if you want to look for it. And seeking for community is a good way, but don't expect someone's going to pick your fat ass up and move you there and there's not work to be done. I think that's what I want to say, because Matt, if nothing, has showed me and talked about in this conversation, he's done tons of work on himself and on his community and on his family.
Yeah, and you mentioned the internet, and it's a very powerful tool, but it's a tool, right? And it's enabled me and you and I to get together in this virtual format and exchange ideas. And I feel very inspired by you as well, as a strong man out in the world doing good work. So I feel like we have a community bond, and I'm finding that my community is growing in this way. Or we can use the internet to, flip through TikTok videos and look at smut and porn, and, but you've done the hard work yourself of growing as a man and putting out good energy in this world and holding space where it's desperately needed. And so we're able to use this tool, I think, in a really positive way.
I would agree. I mean, you can pick up a hammer and, beat someone to death. You can pick up a hammer and build a house, right? So it really, as Matt said, a tool is a tool. It's the person using the tool that's important, or not using the tool. And with what Matt said, here's what I'm going to suggest is this is the first community video we're putting up on our homepage. Go to newagora.ca, go to the top array. You'll see how to build a better community, how to build a better consciousness. We're inviting anyone who wants to intelligently participate and contribute to come and join us. I'm going to put this video up along with a bit of an introduction I'm hoping Matt's going to write relating to what we've talked about and how to build a better community. And we both invite intelligent comments, questions, participations, and suggestions. Matt can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. We would love a million intelligent people. And I think if there's billions in the planet, there must be a million people out there that aren't too far gone in the shenanigans of the day, we'll say, that they can't understand the happy, healthy, intelligent benefits of working together to build a better world, whether it's inside, outside, your family, the neighbor, maybe a new country, I'm not sure, maybe a new reality, a whole new dream. I've heard all kinds of stories in the studies I've done, and I think we can do it together and alone as long as our integrity and our love is in the right place.
I couldn't agree more. And we're just scratching the surface here. We didn't prepare anything for this conversation.
Nope.
We're just riffing. And so the answer to what is community, I'd be very excited to see what people contribute to this.
Well, it's an open-ended question. There was a fellow that wrote the Hero of 1,000 Masks. I forget his name now. Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. And something he said, I watched some interviews he did at the end just before he passed along. And they were very powerful. There was a series of interviews he did on one of the public channels. I forget which one. And you saw a man who studied history, who studied myth, who studied himself deeply, and he was looking at his own mortality, which is very interesting. So you could see the look in his eye as he talked about the next journey he was going to take. And one of the quotes he said, and I may be paraphrasing here, is a real story he said, doesn't give you an ending. It takes you to a cliff and pushes you off.
Oh,
yeah.
I think that was with Bill Moyers, maybe.
Maybe. Yes, it was. Right. He did that interview. And to me, I would say this is how this community can be built. We're going to a cliff, we're going to be pushed off. And it's not so that you can fall, it's so that you can learn to fly, I would say, and you can see where it takes you. Matt has his skills. There's dozens other that are already here. Come bring your skills with us. Matt can help in some ways. I can help in other ways. Matt needs help in some ways. I need help in some ways. All of the people with us are of a similar nature. I wanted to share with Matt, there's a lady that's joined us from his country, but she's from where he grew up in Brooklyn. That's where she lives right now. And she's retired teacher, and she's got Sacred Child homeschooling lessons because she didn't want to take, the imposed medical recommendations of the day. So she lost her job. And so she said basically to their system, and she's developing her own way to help children, learn, because her skill set, having been in the educational industry for 40 years, is teaching children. So she's come to our community. Sacred Child Learning is her hub. It's up there. People can check it out for themselves now. And the bottom line here then is bring your skills. We can help. You can help together. We can build a better community. And we'd love to continue this discussion, face to face with myself or Matt, online anytime. And anybody that has any other suggestions, and it doesn't have to be words or video. It could be songs, right? Could be art. Could be music. It's really totally up to you and how you feel you can share and make a better world.
Right on.
All right. So I'm going to leave this conversation here. It seems we've said it all. Please like and subscribe to the video. Please join us. And if anybody has anything new that they want to share, send it along to me. Matt's contact will also be put underneath this video, as I will link to his hub as well. And if you have any questions or suggestions, or you want to reach out to either of us or anyone else, please don't be shy. We'd be delighted to chat with you again.
Lorenzo, it's wonderful to talk to you, as always.
Bye-bye, everyone. I love you all very much. Hope to see you again soon.